Listen carefully, because what you're about to hear isn't advice. It's a psychological map of what happens in someone's mind when they discover that your dignity is stronger than your love for them. And when that happens, nothing feels the same for either of you. It's not pleasant, it's not sweet, it's not comfortable. It's devastating to their ego, because here they don't just lose affection, they lose position. They lose the comfortable place they occupied in your psyche. That space where they could remain without transforming, without growing, without even noticing how little they were offering. This video doesn't exist to comfort you or inflate your self-esteem with empty phrases. It exists to show you the exact psychological mechanism that activates when he discovers he can no longer have you at any price, that he can no longer negotiate your value, that he can no longer count on your emotional flexibility to stay the same. And when that happens, when this certainty settles in his mind, everything changes. Here you'll hear the 6 true mental stages his mind goes through when your dignity prevails, from initial confusion to inner breakdown, to the point where the dynamic reverses forever, and you stop being an option and become a conscious choice. If you leave before the end, you'll miss the most dangerous and decisive part, the one that separates the woman who gives in again from the woman who will never again be taken for granted. The one that separates those who return to the old pattern from those who have finally understood that their value is non-negotiable. This isn't just any content. It's the message you need to hear in full if you don't want to lose yourself again for love, if you don't want to betray yourself again in small things, if you don't want to keep confusing patience with mature love and accommodation with care. Jung warned that no one confronts another human being without first confronting their own shadow. And that's exactly what happens here. Your dignity forces him to see what he'd been avoiding. That part of himself that doesn't want to grow, that wants to stay comfortable, that's afraid of not being enough. Your dignity is a mirror that reflects everything he'd hidden behind your emotional availability. If any of this is already resonating with you, subscribe and write "I'm reading you" in the comments. That way YouTube understands that this reflection deserves to continue. Everything you're hearing, the moment you stop being negotiable, the dignity that becomes structure and not hardness, the return to yourself, I've gathered and organized step by step in a book called The Art of Detachment, How to Reclaim Your Power When Someone You Love Pulls Away. It's not a manual of techniques to win someone back. It's a guide to stop betraying yourself in small things and return to your center, even when it's scary. If these words are reaching deep inside you, the complete journey is there waiting for you. You'll find the link below in the description. When you're ready, it's yours. Because if you listen to it at the right moment, it doesn't change your mood. It changes the inner structure from which you love. It changes how you allow yourself to be treated. It changes the filter through which you choose who enters your life. First step, the moment he realizes you're no longer negotiable. Listen carefully, because here we're breaking a very common fantasy, one you've probably believed too. A man doesn't notice he's losing you when you leave. He notices when he can no longer move you internally. It's not a phrase you say. It's not a boundary you announce. It's not an emotional scene you create. It's a silent shift in your inner position. And when it happens, he perceives it long before he can explain it in words. He feels it in your silence. He feels it in the way you no longer react like before. He feels it in your energy that no longer asks, no longer adapts, no longer stretches to keep him. I want to make this concrete with a real case, because theories without embodiment remain empty. Christabel came to consultation with a story that repeats more often than you'd imagine. She was affectionate, deep, committed. She didn't beg, didn't chase, didn't make scenes. From the outside, anyone would have said she has dignity, but internally she negotiated in silence, justified absences, waited too long, tolerated small inconsistencies so as not to be inconvenient, until something changed. Not outside, but inside. And that movement activated the first real break in his mind. For years, Christabel confused patience with mature love. She thought understanding meant yielding, that adapting meant caring, and without realizing it, she taught her inner system and his that her space could expand without breaking. Every long wait, every lukewarm response, every accumulated "it's okay" formed a silent dynamic. There was no malice, but there was no growth either. Because when you adapt too much, the other never feels the urgency to sort himself out. And this is felt even if it's not said. It's as if your body were saying, "This is fine," even though your mind knows it's not. And he feels it even if he doesn't name it. The break didn't come with a slammed door or dramatic tears. It came the day Christabel stopped over-explaining herself. Something didn't sit right with her, and she no longer justified it. Something irritated her, and she no longer swallowed it. She didn't leave, didn't threaten, didn't complain. She simply stopped betraying herself in small things. This gesture, as invisible as it is radical, reconfigures everything, because when you return to yourself, your energy stops asking, stops adapting so the other won't leave. And this is felt as an immediate loss of access. It's not that you're cold, it's that you're no longer available at the price of abandoning yourself. Here appears the first masculine mental reaction. It's not fear yet, it's discomfort. He doesn't understand what's changed, he only feels that something no longer reacts the same way. Your silence weighs differently. Your boundaries don't sound defensive, they sound firm. Your presence no longer offers itself like before, and this forces him to observe, not to take care of you, but to reposition himself. Because when a woman stops being negotiable without announcing it, without drama, without ultimatums, the man encounters a new sensation. The dynamic he took for granted is no longer assured. Jung would say that at this point, the shadow activates. That part of the psyche that reacts when it loses emotional control, not dominance, access. He doesn't think, I'll lose her. He thinks something deeper. I no longer understand from what position to relate to her. Before, when Christabel left, he lost a woman. Now when she leaves, he loses a comfortable inner position, and this unsettles him more than physical absence. Because love can be replaced, embodied dignity cannot. It's important that you see this clearly. This doesn't happen when you leave. It happens when you make three simultaneous inner movements. You stop staying where your body tenses to maintain the relationship. You stop explaining yourself to someone who isn't willing to listen. You begin making small decisions that are in alignment with you, even if the other doesn't like them. Not to provoke, not to punish, but to respect yourself. When you do this, you don't become cold, you become clear. And clarity is deeply intimidating to someone who is comfortable in your emotional ambiguity. The man begins to measure, observes timing, words, reactions, not because you're manipulating him, but because you've stopped manipulating yourself, so he'll stay. Here his fantasy breaks. I think she's always there. And when this certainty falls, his mind goes on alert. It's not love yet, it's reordering, because no one appreciates what seems unconditional, but they do appreciate what has silent boundaries. This is the true beginning of psychological respect. Many women believe dignity is hardness, that it's cold rejection, that it's closing the heart. No, dignity is inner coherence maintained over time. It's not an emotional reaction, it's a structure. Christabel didn't become distant, she became integral, and this activated in him a dangerous question. What place do I occupy now? You're no longer a reaction, you're a presence. You no longer chase, you choose. And this constant choice without words disarms every dynamic based on comfort. There's no punishment here, there's structure, and structure organizes more than any declaration of love. This step is silent but irreversible, because once your system learns it doesn't need to tense to love, it can never go back. He feels it even if he doesn't name it. He knows something has changed, that he can no longer count on your emotional flexibility, and this forces him to define himself, grow or withdraw. Both options arise from the same point. You return to yourself, not from an external threat, not from punishment, but from an inner integrity that's no longer negotiable. I want you to hold this phrase as an anchor because it changes the entire chessboard. I don't have to leave to stop being negotiable. I have to return to myself. When you integrate this, the bond stops holding together by inertia, and the masculine mind, losing its comfort, begins to compare not you with the past, but with any other woman who doesn't embody this level of coherence. And there's something even deeper begins. In the next step, we'll enter this critical point. Why does your dignity activate more respect than all the love you've given? Because without you realizing it, he begins measuring what he had with you against what he can no longer obtain so easily. This is the moment when the inner game becomes irreversible and when you stop being a memory and become a reference, an inner reference that doesn't erase easily, not even when the relationship ends. Second step, why your dignity activates more respect than all the love you gave together. It hurts, but it liberates. Listen well, because this is the point where many women get confused. Love without structure becomes landscape. It's there, it sustains, but it doesn't organize. It's beautiful, but it doesn't transform. What truly reorganizes a man's mind is the inner form from which you love. When you love without abandoning yourself, when you don't shrink to adapt, when you maintain your axis, even when you love deeply, he can no longer read you from comfort. And this silent, firm change weighs more than any emotional promise you made before. The common mistake is believing that giving more love generates more commitment. No, it generates more habit. Dignity, however, introduces a new variable: consequence, not punishment, not coldness, coherence. Jung explained that the psyche respects what has contour. When you have clear internal boundaries, the other perceives that there's something they cannot cross without transforming. And this awakens respect even before desire, because now he doesn't possess you emotionally. He must position himself before you. You're no longer an extension of him. You're another person with your own boundaries. Here, an unconscious comparison occurs. He begins making contrasts. Doesn't verbalize it, but feels it. Your current presence against the past version that always adapted. Your calm against your old waiting. Your coherence against your old flexibility. And this comparison generates inner tension, because before, your love was guaranteed. Now your access isn't. And when access stops being secure, the masculine mind enters evaluation. Not romantic, strategic. Do I rise up or lose this place? This question marks a before and after. Many women think this is manipulation. No, it's not. Manipulating would mean changing to provoke a reaction. Here, you're not changing for him, you're changing for coherence with yourself. And this is felt differently. Your energy no longer pushes, doesn't ask, doesn't adapt. It is. And this stable presence without effort disarms more than any speech, because he can no longer lean on your emotional flexibility to stay the same. Now he must grow or feel uncomfortable until he leaves. In consultation, this point appears in their confused phrases, I don't know what's happening to me. I perceive her differently. Before it was simpler. Simple isn't love. It's access without consequences. And when this is lost, something new appears, real attention. Not always healthy, not always mature, but finally attention, because your dignity has forced his system to wake up, not from fear of losing you physically, but from the sensation of losing an inner place that gave him security without effort. This is where many doubt and take a step back. When he begins approaching differently, measuring, being more attentive, the temptation to yield again appears, and there everything is decided. Because if you use your dignity as strategy, it dilutes. But if you maintain it as identity, it solidifies. Jung would say this is the moment when the bond stops being projection and becomes conscious choice. And not everyone is ready to choose from there. Your dignity doesn't guarantee he'll stay. It guarantees something more important, that you won't lose yourself. And paradoxically, that's what has the most impact, because you no longer move from fear of losing him. You move from respect for your inner axis. And this emotional autonomy changes the balance. He's no longer the evaluator. Now, he's the one who must understand if he can live up to the coherence you embody without announcing it. This respect doesn't arise from sacrifice, it arises from boundaries. Not from drama, but from maintained calm. When you don't react from the wound but from clarity, he can no longer play at the same level as before. And this makes him uncomfortable but also awakens him. Because dignity doesn't seduce like attachment does, but it leaves a trace that doesn't erase easily, not even when the relationship ends. You become the inner reference, not the romantic memory. I want you to see this without idealizing. Some men grow before this, others withdraw. Both results are coherent. What changes is that you no longer negotiate your center to hold on to someone, and when your love arises from there, it stops being a constant offer and becomes shared choice. This is the difference between being desired and being respected. And the masculine mind, even if it doesn't admit it, always knows when it's encountering the second. In the next step, we'll enter an even more delicate zone. Before entering the next step, pause for a moment, because what you're hearing isn't isolated content. It's part of a much broader journey that's transforming you while you listen. What happens when he begins to feel fear? Not of losing you, but of not being enough to keep you. There appear contradictory behaviors, approaches and withdrawals, silent tests. And if you don't understand this point, you can confuse intensity with love. But if you understand it, you'll remain steady while the dynamic completely reverses from within. Third step, when respect begins transforming into silent fear. It's not the childish fear of losing you, it's the adult fear of not being up to the task. Here the masculine mind enters contradiction. He wants to approach but fears exposing himself. He seeks you and then withdraws, not because he's playing, but because his identity is reorganizing. Your dignity forces him to look at himself without the cushion of your availability, and this activates an inner anxiety, even if outwardly he shows calm or distance. This fear doesn't express itself with clear words. It appears as ambiguity, lukewarm messages, intense but inconsistent gestures. He tests whether you're still there, but no longer from the same place. And when he realizes you don't react like before, that you don't chase or complain, the unease grows, because now he can no longer regulate himself through your emotional reaction. Jung would call this a confrontation with the true self without masks. And not everyone knows how to bear that inner gaze. Many women misinterpret this moment. They confuse intensity with progress. They believe intermittent closeness is a sign of emerging love. Not always. Sometimes it's just a system trying to regain control. Your task isn't to decipher it, but to remain steady. If you don't move from fear, if you don't fill the voids, he finds himself facing something new, his own void. And this encounter can transform him or push him to flee. The important thing is this: listen to it calmly. Your dignity doesn't accelerate processes, it reveals them. If he approaches from presence, you'll feel it. If he approaches from fear, you'll feel that too. The difference lies in stability. Love born from fear needs constant proof. Love born from respect seeks integration, and you, by not abandoning your center, become the natural filter that distinguishes one from the other without saying a single word. At this point, the dynamic has already begun to reverse. Before, you were the one measuring, timing, words, gestures. Now it's him. He observes whether you're still available, whether something loosens, whether you return to adapting. And when you don't, an uncomfortable but revealing sensation appears. He no longer has you secured. Not because you're leaving, but because you're no longer dependent. It's this emotional independence that reorganizes his perception of value more than anything. Jung stated that authentic desire arises when the other cannot be possessed, only encountered. Your dignity removes you from the position of emotional object and returns you to that of subject. And this changes the gaze. You're no longer the one who's always there. You're the one who chooses to be there. This difference seems subtle, but it completely transforms the experience of the bond, because now he no longer relates to your dedication but to your conscious presence. This is a delicate phase for you too, because if he shows fear or confusion, it can awaken your old role. Reassure, explain, support. Here is decided whether your dignity is identity or strategy. If you give energy back to the bond, the system returns to the known. If you maintain yourself, something new is installed, not from coldness, but from inner coherence. And this coherence begins requiring from him a clearer position. Some men at this point rise up, become more present, more emotionally responsible. Others weaken not because you were wrong, but because the level has risen and dignity doesn't negotiate downward. You don't push, don't threaten, you simply don't descend. And this redefines the bond without confrontation because true respect isn't imposed, it's embodied. And when it's embodied, it can no longer be ignored. I want you to observe something important. When he begins to change, it's not because you convinced him, it's because your integrity put him in front of himself. And when he doesn't change, it's not failure, it's information. Your dignity saves you years of confusion, shows you who can meet you at the level where you are, and who could only love you when you made yourself smaller. This clarity hurts at first, but liberates in the long term. In the next step, we'll enter the point of no return. When he understands he can no longer return to the version of you that bent, a definitive inner decision appears, not always conscious, but determining. And depending on how you maintain yourself at that point, this decision can transform him deeply or seal the ending with an elegance that wasn't possible before. Fourth step, the moment he understands there's no going back. The version of you that waited, that adapted, that yielded just to maintain, she's not coming back. And this certainty doesn't arrive with a conversation, it arrives with an irreversible inner sensation. He can no longer provoke the same reaction in you, can no longer count on your emotional availability. Something is closed, not from resentment, but from coherence. And when this happens, his mind stops testing and begins deciding from a deeper place. Here appears a silent mourning. He doesn't cry for your physical absence. He mourns the loss of a dynamic that gave him security without effort. And this hurts more than you imagine, because confronting a woman who doesn't back down forces him to accept his own limitations. Jung defined this point as the death of a projection. You no longer carry his voids. And when the projection falls, only two paths remain, mature or withdraw emotionally. If he decides to stay, the way he looks at you changes, no longer from comfort, but from conscious respect. He begins to regulate himself, to take emotional responsibility, to measure what he offers, not from fear of losing you, but because he understands he cannot maintain you from the same level. Your dignity has raised the standard without demanding it, and this movement redefines the bond. You're no longer refuge, you're encounter. And not everyone knows how to love from there. If he decides to go, even the closure is different. There's no persistent drama, no eternal back and forth. There's a clear sense of inner boundary. You don't chase explanations, don't try to convince. And this leaves a trace, because even if he leaves, he carries with him an impossible to erase reference, that of a woman who didn't negotiate her access for love. This image returns later when other dynamics are no longer enough. This point is decisive for you because doubt usually appears here. Was I too rigid? You were coherent, and coherence is never excess. Love that survives only if you shrink isn't love, it's dependency. Your dignity didn't destroy anything precious, it only revealed what couldn't sustain itself at your level. And even if it hurts to let go, something in you begins to rest. There's no more constant tension or silent self-abandonment. Jung would say that here begins your true individuation. You no longer define yourself by being chosen, but by choosing yourself. And this identity transforms all your future bonds because now you don't love from lack. You love from presence. You don't seek to be enough. You already are. And this energy changes how others approach, not from request, but from recognition. Your dignity becomes the natural filter. This step marks the definitive before and after. It doesn't matter if he returns or not. You never return to the version that waited for crumbs. And this is the true gain, because now you know you don't need intensity to feel valuable, nor promises to stay. Your calm becomes home. And from there can only enter those who know how to inhabit it without seeking to disturb it to feel superior. Many men remember this type of woman, not with romantic nostalgia, but with belated respect, because she was the one who showed them the limit they couldn't cross. And that limit, far from shutting them out, put them in front of themselves. You didn't teach with discourse, you taught with embodiment, and that's what remains when everything else dissolves with time. I want you to breathe here because this isn't a point of hardness, it's a point of calm. You no longer have to sustain the unsustainable. You no longer have to translate yourself to be loved. Your dignity hasn't isolated you, it has organized you. And when you're organized within, the outside begins responding differently, not always quickly, not always simply, but always more authentically. In the next and final step, we'll close the circle. What happens when you integrate all this as identity, not as reaction to a specific story? How will your way of loving and being chosen be rewritten? There, where you no longer define yourself by who stays, but by what you'll never again allow. This is the point where love stops hurting and begins feeling authentic. Fifth step, when you integrate dignity as identity, not as response to a wound. Here you no longer act from the past, you act from presence. Your decisions don't seek an effect, they seek coherence, and this is noticed. Your yes has weight, your no rests. There's no urgency to define anything because you're already defined from within. This stability changes how others read you because there are no longer emotional cracks through which to enter to negotiate your value. At this point, love stops being a continuous test. You no longer need signals to feel secure. Your body is aligned with your boundaries, your word with your actions. And this congruence, so simple and so rare, becomes magnetic, not through seduction, but through clarity. Whoever approaches perceives it, and whoever cannot sustain it withdraws without noise. Dignity doesn't argue, it organizes the field. Here something subtle happens. You begin noticing you no longer hook into vague promises or intensity without direction. Your system recognizes the difference between presence and performance. This saves you time, energy, illusions. You don't become demanding, you become precise, and emotional precision is a language understood only by those ready to connect without games. The rest falls away on its own, without collision. Jung spoke of integration as the act of stopping fragmenting yourself to please others. That's what you do here. You no longer separate what you feel from what you allow. You don't negotiate your intuition to maintain a bond. And when someone tries to cross a boundary, your body reacts before your words. There's no anger, there's an elegant withdrawal, and this withdrawal, far from closing the heart, protects it. This is the point where many say, I no longer attract the same type of people. Exactly, because you no longer transmit from lack. Your dignity changes the frequency. You no longer call on those who need to be held, but those who know how to hold themselves. And this doesn't guarantee quantity, it guarantees quality. Less noise, more truth. Less fear, more choice. Your love life doesn't simplify because you love less, but because you love yourself better. Here, the memory of him loses strength, not because he wasn't important, but because he no longer occupies the center. The center is you, and from there, the past organizes itself without resentment. You're grateful for what you learned and you move forward. There are no open accounts. There are inner closures. This is true liberation. Not when the other returns or asks forgiveness, but when you no longer need him to be at peace. This change is noticed even in silence. You no longer explain your boundaries. Don't justify your decisions. You simply act in coherence. And this coherence becomes your new normal. Whoever arrives late perceives it. There's no reproach, there's natural distance. Dignity doesn't build walls, it establishes thresholds, and only those who know how to cross them without invading enter. When you look back, you understand something important. You didn't lose love, you gained inner structure. And this structure is the foundation of every healthy bond. Without it, love overflows and wounds. With it, love contains itself and grows. Jung would say that here the bond stops being compensation and becomes true encounter. Two emotionally adult people who choose each other, who don't need each other. This is the legacy of your dignity, not changing anyone, but moving yourself to another place, leaving the role of constant option and inhabiting that of conscious choice. And from there, everything reorganizes, your relationships, your energy, your decisions. You no longer chase, you attract presence. You no longer fear losing, you trust your capacity to choose better. And now, at the closing of this cycle, remember this because it contains everything that precedes it. Your dignity doesn't distance you from love, it brings you to the right one. It doesn't make you inaccessible, it makes you authentic. And when you're authentic, love stops being a struggle and becomes a home. From here, you don't go back because you no longer seek to be chosen, you choose yourself. Sixth step, when everything reconfigures from within, you no longer act from reaction, you act from identity. This is the point where dignity stops being a concept and becomes your natural way of being in the world. You don't ask yourself what to do so the other stays. You ask yourself if that bond honors what you are now. And this silent question guides every decision. There's no urgency, no fear. There's a firm calm that's no longer negotiable. Here, something profound happens. Your nervous system learns that love doesn't have to hurt to be real. You no longer confuse intensity with connection or sacrifice with commitment. Your body recognizes when something is healthy and when it's not. And this inner intelligence saves infinite explanations. You don't have to close cycles with words. You close them with coherence. And that coherence is felt even in your silence, even when you say nothing. Many men don't forget a woman like this, not because she was perfect, but because she was integral, because she didn't betray herself to be chosen, because she showed without speaking what someone who respects themselves looks like. Jung said that what isn't integrated repeats itself, and you have broken the repetition. I think that's how you became an inner reference point for whoever knew you. Not everyone recognizes it immediately, but everyone remembers it. This is the point where love stops being a psychological game. There are no more tests, strategies, roles to maintain. There's presence, there's reciprocal choice, and if there isn't, there's still peace, because your value no longer depends on being desired, but on being faithful to yourself. This inner faithfulness is the foundation of every bond worth living. Without it, everything is negotiated. With it, everything is organized. I want you to hear this with tenderness. Not everyone can love you from this level, and it's not a loss, it's a natural purification. Your dignity doesn't exclude, it filters. It lets in those who can sustain a relationship without depending on your self-sacrifice. And even if the path becomes more selective, it also becomes lighter. Less noise, less confusion, more truth. When you integrate all this, you no longer look back with guilt, but with understanding. You understand why you yielded, why you waited, why you adapted, and you also understand why you can't do it anymore. Not because you're hard, but because you've grown. Uh, And growing means letting go of old versions of yourself. That too is self-esteem, one that doesn't need to prove itself, only sustain itself. Carl Jung spoke of individuation as the most courageous act of the human being, becoming what you truly are, even if it means losing bonds that existed only through dependency. You have walked this path, and thus you've changed the way you love, choose, and let yourself be chosen. You no longer seek to complete yourself, you share from your fullness. This is love that doesn't consume itself. If this message has reached you, stay a moment, like, and subscribe. And if you want to carry all this with you, not as a momentary emotion, but as an inner structure that remains, the book, The Art of Detachment, is there below in the description. It's the way to continue this journey when the video has ended. Small gestures that help this space grow together with you. And tell me in the comments which part touched you most, because when we share from truth, YouTube favors what we choose together, and this type of reflection only reaches those who are ready to hear it. Don't forget this when you close the video. Your dignity isn't a barrier, it's a lighthouse. It doesn't chase love away, it orients it. And whoever from now on comes toward you will come knowing they cannot take you for granted, but they can find you through choice. This is the difference between a bond that consumes and one that sustains. Today, you don't leave with techniques, but with an embodied truth. You don't have to prove your value or convince someone to stay. Your simple presence, aligned and firm, already says everything. As a final reminder, integrate it into a phrase that will accompany you from now on, because it defines your new place. I am the boundary that teaches how to truly love. This phrase contains everything. It's not a threat. It's a declaration of integrity. When you carry it within, your way of being in relationships changes completely. You're no longer the one waiting to be chosen. You're the one who consciously chooses. You're no longer the one who adapts for love. You're the one who loves from your fullness. And when you love from there, when you love from this place of embodied dignity, everything changes. Others feel it. Your body knows it. Your energy communicates it without words. And from this moment forward, whoever enters your life will have to learn to relate to a woman who doesn't negotiate her center, who doesn't betray herself in small things, who doesn't confuse patience with mature love, who doesn't believe adapting means caring. This is the woman you become. This is the woman who remains, and this is the woman who will never again be taken for granted. Because your dignity isn't a temporary reaction to a wound. It's an inner structure that has consolidated. It's a way of being that isn't negotiated. It's a boundary that teaches how to truly love. And when someone learns this lesson from you, when someone understands they can no longer count on your emotional flexibility to stay the same, when someone encounters a woman who doesn't bend, then true transformation happens. He won't always change. He won't always stay. But you will be changed forever. And that's the true gain, because you no longer depend on what he chooses to do. You only depend on what you choose to allow. And this emotional autonomy is the freedom you were seeking, not the freedom to leave, the freedom to stay without losing yourself, the freedom to love without abandoning yourself, the freedom to choose from a place of strength, not fear. This is the legacy of your dignity. This is what remains when everything else dissolves, when feelings soften, when passion calms, when time passes and things change. This remains. The awareness that you didn't betray yourself remains. The certainty that you maintained your access remains. The peace of knowing you loved from your integrity remains. And this peace, this awareness, this embodied integrity is what no one can take from you. It's what you'll carry into every future relationship. It's what you'll communicate without words to whomever you meet. It's the lighthouse that guides your path. And when someone arrives in your life, they arrive knowing they cannot take you for granted. They arrive knowing there are boundaries. They arrive knowing your dignity is non-negotiable. And if they're ready, if they're mature, if they're willing to grow, then they can enter. Then they can love you from a place of awareness. Then they can choose you not because you're available, but because you're authentic. This is the love worth living. This is the bond that sustains. This is what happens when you integrate dignity as identity. When you stop using it as strategy and begin living it as being. When it's no longer a reaction to a wound, but an inner structure that sustains you. When it's no longer something you do, but something you are, then everything changes. Then love stops hurting. Then bonds stop consuming you. Then your love life transforms, not because you find someone different, but because you are different, because you are integral, because you are aware, because you are faithful to yourself. And this inner faithfulness is the foundation of everything that comes after. Remember it when the video ends. Remember it when doubt arrives. Remember it when the temptation to yield presents itself. Remember it when someone tries to negotiate your value. Always remember it. I am the boundary that teaches how to truly love. This is your new identity. This is your new home. From here, you don't go back. From here, you only move forward. And everything that comes after is built on this solid foundation, on this embodied integrity, on this dignity that isn't negotiated. This is true power, not the power to control others, the power to control yourself, the power to choose consciously, the power to love from your fullness, the power to say no without guilt, the power to say yes only when it's authentic. This is the power that dignity returns to you. And once you have it, once you feel it in your body, once you live it in your daily life, you can never go back. You don't want to go back because you know what it means to live from a place of integrity, and you know what it means to live from a place of compromise. And you always choose the first, always, without exceptions, without negotiations, without doubts, because your dignity isn't a choice you make every day. It's a choice you made once and for all. And from there, everything else follows naturally. Everything else organizes itself. Everything else aligns. In your love life, your entire life transforms. Not because someone changes, but because you have changed. And this change is irreversible. It's permanent. It's your new reality. Accept it. Celebrate it. Live it fully. Because this is the woman you've become. And this is the woman who remains.